Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope everyone's doing well. Thanks for joining me once again. So in today's video, I'm just continuing to talk about my existing CD collection. So you'll recall from the last video, I'm still going through the letter H at the moment. And as you can probably tell from the title of this video, or maybe not, all of these bands contain the word or the prefix hell in them, or most of them. There's a couple of other ones, hence the title Hell and Beyond, because it's going a little bit further, but I thought this was a good stack to talk about before the next series where it's multiple releases by a band. So that's what I'm going to do today. 8 CDs to talk about, and let's get into it. Okay, the first album I'm talking about, continuing with H, this is Helloween with Halls of Jericho, and it also includes the mini EP. Yeah, the Helloween EP, so it's like 2 releases in one. I saw this secondhand at a local market. I am a fan of Helloween, except not a die-hard fan compared to some people. Actually, I discovered them quite late too. It was in 2008, a friend of mine had a free ticket to go and see them in Sydney, and I remember I'd always heard the name, but didn't know any of their music. Went to that show and actually really enjoyed it. And yeah, then I started to buy a couple of albums. But this one, yeah, I only got a few years ago. If you're not familiar, highly unlikely, but Helloween are how would you describe them? A heavy metal band from Germany, but it's also taking a strong influence from speed metal and power metal, especially with later albums, in addition to sort of the aggression of thrash metal. So it's this kind of melting pot, heavy metal, thrash metal, speed metal, and power metal. But yeah, one of the sort of legendary German bands in the scene. This particular album, I hope I don't annoy anyone by saying this, but I'm not heavily into it, but it's just good quality heavy metal. So when, you know, like the way people have often described Helloween, it's like Iron Maiden on speed, so similar kind of style, but faster, you know, with the soaring vocals, the melodies, guitar harmonies, blistering guitar solos. So if you like all those elements of traditional heavy metal, you'll probably like Helloween. Yeah, as I said, I do. And this particular album, though, it's not one of my favorites, but still a good one. It has all those signature elements of German power metal. But yeah, it starts with the Helloween EP, and a few good songs on here. Probably my favorites would be Starlight, Murderer has a catchy chorus, and also Victim of Fate. And then it goes into the Walls of Jericho release, which has also got quite a lot of songs. And again, it's a bit hit and miss, this album for me. Like, there are some standout tracks, but there's a lot I don't get into that much. But probably my favorites from Walls of Jericho are Reptile, that's got a catchy chorus, also Guardians, and I think Judas. Yeah, so only a select amount of tracks on this, but it's not terrible, absolutely not. Like, a lot of people love this stuff, but for me it's more sort of background music, but there's with a few standout tracks, and I think the band has done better with subsequent releases, which we'll get into. So just show you the cover art here, which is pretty cool. Booklet with all of the lyrics, which are so tiny, it's impossible to read with my bad eyesight these days. And what's pretty cool about this one is the actual disc design. And there's the back there. So yeah, 2 releases combined in one. So the Helloween EP and Walls of Jericho album. So yeah, as I said, I do like it, but it's not one of my favorite Helloween releases, but good nevertheless. So that's Helloween with the Helloween EP and Walls of Jericho. All right, now, up next we have probably my favorite, actually it is my favorite Helloween album of all time. So this is Helloween with Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 1. Yeah, undoubtedly it's my favorite. In my opinion, this is a perfect heavy metal album. This was the one I bought just after I saw them live in 2008, and I became a massive fan of this band as a result of this album. Still really love it to this day. Yep, so this is, it saw a change in comparison to this album. It became a lot more melodic and epic, I think, and also there was a change in vocalists. Like Michael Kiske is the lead vocalist on this album. He was the most famous vocalist for Helloween. He has a much more melodic and powerful voice. Like Kai Hansen, who sang on this album, he does have a good voice, but it's more sort of gritty and aggressive, more sort of suited to speed and thrash metal. But it became a lot more epic, like Bruce Dickinson-esque on this album, in my opinion. So yes, it's a lot more Maiden-esque in comparison to the earlier release. And just some great melodies, hooks, and really catchy and well-written songs. So I can't complain about any song on this album. I listened to it from beginning to end, love all of the songs. So it starts off with the sort of subdued intro initiation, but I'm Alive, very classic Maiden-esque elements there. A Little Time, that was the first Helloween track that really stood out to me, like just amazing vocals from Michael Kiske, very melodic and really catchy chorus, so I love that song. Also A Tale That Wasn't Right, like just an epic, sorrowful power ballad, but not cheesy at all, just really infectious, great to listen to, and it sticks in your head big time, so I really like that song. Future World is probably one of my favorite Helloween songs of all time. Like, what's interesting about that song is it's fast and galloping, and it's even got a sort of like happy, high on life vibe, but it is just really irresistible, that song, because it's just incredibly catchy, great melodies, and it's just so many great moments in that song, like before the guitar solo, which is excellent, like the giggle or the laugh or whatever, and the machinery and the soaring vocals, just absolutely brilliant. Yep, and then of course the song Helloween, which was the first Helloween song I ever heard. When I saw this band live, they played that song, and I thought it sounds like Iron Maiden, but really haunting and spooky. A lot of atmosphere on that song, which is great. And then it ends with Follow the Sign, which is an atmospheric, mystical outro, which I really enjoy. Yep, so no bad songs on this album, but probably my favorites are A Little Time, A Tale That Wasn't Right, Future World, and Helloween. So there you go. And you can see this is an expanded edition, so they've got some bonus tracks which are Victim of Fate, Starlight, A Little Time, and Helloween. They are remixed versions. But yes, just a very enjoyable album, no complaints about this. So yeah, as I said, it's my favorite Helloween album of all time in terms of the ones I've heard. Cool cover art as well, very mystical to sort of suit the atmosphere of this music. And yep, then you've got a booklet with some old magazine and newspaper articles, interesting pictures, and all of the lyrics. Again, they're so tiny, so they're difficult to read, but Michael sings in a very clear way, so you don't really need them. And yep, there's the disc. Yeah, so if for some reason you haven't checked this album out and you really like power metal or traditional heavy metal, I couldn't recommend this album more. It's a masterpiece, in my opinion, so absolutely brilliant. That's Helloween with Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 1. Now, up next, we go into quite a contrast, in my opinion. In my opinion, I'll just reiterate that. So then we have the follow-up. This is Helloween with Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2. Okay, yep, so obviously they have a little chapter thing going. Now, people might know how I feel about this album. You may recall, if you've been watching my channel for a while, I included it in my 10 terrible albums in my collection video, and I got slammed and roasted by a lot of people saying, how dare you say that? What about this album? What's wrong with you? It's brilliant. Sorry, in my opinion, it's not. So let me just clarify that. I feel with a lot of those choices, when I said, like, terrible is a very strong word, I don't feel that this album is terrible at all. Like, it's still that classic style that they play of, you know, Germanic heavy metal, power metal with a bit of speed metal mixed in. So good musicianship, you know, they can obviously write songs, it's talented. The problem with this album for me is I just don't like the songs. So if that makes sense, competent and talented playing and singing, you know, with the guitar solos, the vocals, all elements of the music, yeah, they can obviously play. But the songs just don't grab me. And that's just for me. And I know, again, my opinion is not the law. A lot of people love this album and say it's actually their favorite. It just doesn't do it for me. And even the other day, I tried to listen to this again. I listened to it the whole way through to see, am I missing something? No, just for me, it doesn't grab me. But we're all different, aren't we? I know someone made a funny comment about that when I said that before, but honestly, yeah, this is what we call taste. So everyone's entitled to their opinion. You know, like I said, so none of the songs are terrible. I'm not going, oh God, this is awful. I just find the songs boring. But there are a couple of standouts. I Want Out is a pretty good song. You know, that was one of the singles from this album, like very catchy, and it has a distinctly 80s atmosphere. And also I think undoubtedly the favorite catchy song for me is track 5, Dr. Steen. It's a bit sort of happy and silly, but it's just got a good catchy chorus which you can sing along to. One thing that irks me about that song though is this is a German band. So why are they saying Dr. Steen? That's how they pronounce it. Like everyone knows, you know, if you're in Germany, the way they pronounce that word is Stein. So why is a German band saying Dr. Steen? I don't get it. But maybe they were doing that to reach out to an international English-speaking audience. I don't know, but it's your own language. It's Dr. Stein. But anyway, that's a shortcoming, a minor shortcoming. And then this also includes a bonus tracks disc, which contains 5 songs: Savage, Livin' Ain't No Crime, Don't Run for Cover, Dr. Steen, and Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2. So again, most of those tracks don't do much for me. Keeper of the Seven Keys, the actual song on this album, it's pretty good in some moments, but again, it doesn't grab me the whole way through. So the second disc I don't really need either. So basically, 3 songs I kind of like on this album. So Dr. Steen, I Want Out, and Keeper of the Seven Keys, Some Parts. So you can see that overall I don't really like this album much. And, you know, sometimes that just happens. You know, I think it would be very posy to say, oh, I should like this because everyone else does. It just doesn't grab me. But what a contrast to this album, which I think is the best. But anyway, if you like traditional heavy metal and German heavy metal, power metal, I would recommend checking it out. Anyway, cool cover though. I used to have the t-shirt of this, even though I don't like the album that much. I saw it here at a cheap price. Yep, so a booklet with some liner notes here. All of the lyrics, again in tiny microscopic writing. I might invest in a magnifying glass so I can read lyrics again. And yeah, just the disc here. And this has got the bonus disc, which I don't really need because I don't like it that much. Yeah. So this could be another album. Remember when I made a thread about music which doesn't live up to the cover art? I feel that about this album because the cover art is pretty cool, very fantasy oriented. But I just find, as I said, the musicianship is talented, but the songs don't grab me and I find them boring, generally speaking. But you don't have to hate me or you don't have to unsubscribe. This is just my opinion and I believe I've stated it relatively politely. So there you go. Helloween with Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2. All right. So now we go into a completely different style, shifting gears. We're heading over to Australia now with some black death metal. This is HELLSPAWN with Lords of Eternity. So HELLSPAWN are a band from Victoria, Australia, and the way this band grabbed my attention actually was when I saw Mayhem play in Australia. That was 2002, Grand Declaration of War tour. They had a couple of opening bands. One of them was Abominator, which are a great band, and also this one. And I remember it just grabbed me because it was very dark, heavy black metal. So I have mentioned this in my Australian Metal Gems video before, but in a nutshell, what you can expect with HELLSPAWN, it's sort of like the ferocity and aggression of death metal mixed with the symphonic and bombastic elements of bands such as Emperor. I wouldn't say Dimmu Borgir so much because that's more commercial, but yeah, think of the way, you know, the keyboards are always going in Emperor's album, In the Nightside Eclipse, and they're very sort of majestic and soaring. It's like that, but then with brutal blast beats and like the ferocity of death metal, especially like the vocals are kind of, how would I describe it? Like a kind of blackened snarl, but they sound really aggressive. The drumming is just blasting the whole time, and they've got some great riffs, and the keyboards just lift the melodies. So I think the way I described it before actually is imagine Morbid Angel meets Symphonic Emperor. That's what you have, and that's an interesting combination. I've noticed actually that a lot of bands, Australian bands, at least in the 90s, followed this kind of sound. Like in addition to this band, there was Lord Chaos, which had a kind of similar symphonic sound, and also Crucible of Agony, you know, where it's that very sort of frostbitten keyboard sound, but really aggressive, almost death metal-esque musicianship. But yeah, I really enjoy this album. There's, you know, in addition to the fact that there's some keyboards, they also include some acoustic guitars for atmosphere, so they have some sort of haunting atmospheric interludes, and the rest of the time it's just blasting away constantly, but with some catchy keyboard melodies. Yeah, it's really good. So, how many tracks have we got on this album? 8. Yeah, and just by coincidence, my favorites are the last 5. So the first few tracks are good, but for me it takes a while to get going into its brilliant state. So my favorite tracks are the title track, Lords of Eternity, also Heirs to the Throne, Baphomet's Disciples, Necuratul Nefarious. Yeah, and then there's an outro, Realm of the Black Angels, but it's an enjoyable overall listen. So cover art here, pretty cool. And just show you the booklet. Yep, so it's actually a 5-piece. It's 3 main members, but then they have 2 additional members contributing keyboards and other instruments. All of the lyrics here. And just show you the disc, so Baphomet there. And also, I really like this picture, this kind of blurred, distorted picture of them walking through the forest. It's just atmospheric. Yeah, so not really groundbreaking. It's like a cross between Morbid Angel and Emperor, like I said, but if you like both of those bands, you'll really enjoy this. And I think it's an interesting take on black metal, which is characteristic of a lot of Australian bands, or what they were doing in the 90s. So yeah, that's HELLSPAWN with Lords of Eternity. All right. Okay, now moving once again to another style. We're shifting gears to some death metal. This is a fantastic and underrated band in my opinion. This is HELLWITCH with, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Syzygial Miscreancy. So I don't even think Syzygial is a real word, but it sounds cool. The way I discovered HELLWITCH was back in the late 90s when I had a Relapse Records mail order magazine. I used to read it like John Travolta read that book in Pulp Fiction, like everywhere I went, because it always included descriptions of bands and the albums, what they sounded like, and that's what was responsible for me getting into a lot of the bands that I like these days. But yeah, with HELLWITCH, this album, they described it as raw, wicked, guitar-driven death metal, and I thought that sounds awesome, I have to check it out. I did, and I certainly wasn't disappointed. I actually got this originally on a dubbed tape from Ken, from Ken's Death Metal Crypt, because I used to trade with him in the not late 90s, early 2000s, yeah. But then I saw this at a shop over here, brand new, and I just snapped it up immediately. It's fantastic. So the way I would describe their style of death metal, it's very thrashy. It's fast, extremely fast and thrashy. So it's sort of characteristic of that era when thrash metal was evolving and crossing over into death metal. So it's still deeply rooted in thrash, but it has the kind of raspy, high-pitched vocals, and very much sort of the lyrics are based around, you know, darkness and the supernatural and everything, rather than being satanic so much. But yeah, just brilliant, and like shredding leads, really fast technical riffs, but it's technical but catchy, and the drumming is insane, and the vocals are raspy. So I just love this album. And listen to some of these titles, they're really cool. You know, it's just an interesting style of lyricism. Viral exigence, sentient transmography, more derivial dissemination, pyrophobic seizure. I don't even know what some of those words mean. I think they're made up again, but it just sounds really cool. So they also, so the album starts with the acoustic track, The Ascent, and then it blasts into Nosferatu, which is a brilliant track, very catchy. Nosferatu, he will possess you. You'll know what I mean if you've heard the song. And probably, there's no bad songs on this. It's just a like fast roller coaster of intense, blinding, shredding, thrashy death metal. But probably my favorite tracks are Nosferatu, More Derivial Dissemination, and Pyrophobic Seizure, which has these really distorted vocals in them, in the song, and it just adds so much atmosphere and character, so I love it. Then you'll see here, they also include Live at the Culture Club, Fort Lauderdale, so live performance of their songs. I usually skip that part of the album, not because the playing is bad, it's very good, they're actually proving their technical prowess, but the sound quality is shit, so it's all muffled, and when sound quality is really bad, especially with a live album, I just don't bother. But the actual studio album is definitely worth checking out. So here's the cover. Is that inspired by Deep Purple, perhaps? Was it Deep Purple that had an album cover like that? I'm not sure. So all of the lyrics nice and readable for a change. Collage pictures of the band. Yeah, and picture of the band. So this band is mainly the brainchild of Pat Ranieri, so he's the band leader. And actually they came to Bangkok a few years ago, but stupidly I didn't go, oh, was it stupidly? I don't know. I had work very early the next day, so probably best I didn't, because when you see this kind of music live, you want to drink. But yeah, once in a lifetime opportunity, I missed it. But if I get to see them again, I will. But yeah, brilliant album. So this is HELLWITCH with Syzygial Miscreancy. Great title once again. Up next, we have another album, or actually this is an EP by HELLWITCH. This is Teraasymmetry. So also a HELLWITCH release. And I believe this is an EP. It's got 3 songs on it. And yeah, it's continuing in that typical HELLWITCH style, like very technical and thrashy and fast with a lot of guitar solos, raspy vocals. But it's technical yet catchy again. So yeah, Teraasymmetry, the title track, is absolutely brilliant. Like a lot of twists and turns and time changes in that song. And while it's technical, it's very catchy, which is great. And then track 2 actually is probably the most interesting. That's Satan's Wrath. That's uncharacteristically slow and catchy for HELLWITCH, because normally they're going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, but on this particular song, it's mid-paced and catchy, like that riff. So very catchy, and the vocals and the lyrics make it a catchy song, like Satan's Wrath, Feel the Wrath. And I love the intro of that song where the guy says, beware the wrath of Satan, in this really sort of dark, foreboding voice. It's cool. And then it concludes with Dawn of Apostasy, which is another typical HELLWITCH track. So no complaints at all. I got this after Syzygial Miscreancy, but it's just a fun EP. Cool cover art as well, a bit like World Demise by Obituary. But actually this came out first. This was from 1993, so did Obituary get inspiration from them? Maybe. Yep, just got the credits here. And yes, actually the lyrics for the 3 songs. Yep, so they were still a 3-piece at this point. And just show you the disc, which is a cool color as well. Yep, so continuing in that typical HELLWITCH vein and style, but with something different, with a slower track. Yeah, it's great. So if you like HELLWITCH, I definitely recommend checking it out. So that's HELLWITCH with Teraasymmetry. All right, so I've got 2 more albums to go, guys. All right, so that concludes the bands beginning with Hell. Now we're just continuing down the H alphabet, and there are 2 more to talk about. So first of all, this is HEMLOCK with Crush the Race of God. So you may recall I spoke about this album in a collection update last year, so I'm not going to say too much today, but if you're not familiar, HEMLOCK are or were, I'm not sure if they're still around, an American black metal band, famous because it features Danny Lilker from Brutal Truth, Nuclear Assault, and all those other bands. Yeah, so I think it was mainly his creation, and I think I've said this before, I'm not sure, it may also feature Rich Hoke from Brutal Truth on drums, but definitely Danny Lilker. Anyway, so how I would describe HEMLOCK, this is dark throne worship, especially 90s dark throne worship, and taking the most influence from A Blaze in the Northern Sky and also Goat Lord. So it's interesting, Goat Lord by Dark Throne was probably the most obscure, with a really weird, raw, minimalist production. And it sounded, you know, really murky and evil, but this band has obviously taken a lot of influence from that, and also from A Blaze in the Northern Sky, which is one of the most iconic and famous Dark Throne albums. But they also include elements from other albums. Like there's one song where I recognize the riff sounds similar to a Panzerfaust song, Triumphant Gleam. And yeah, there's some parts which sound a bit similar to Total Death by Dark Throne. So yeah, essentially Dark Throne worship taking the majority of influence from A Blaze in the Northern Sky and Goat Lord, and also some other albums. Now my favorite track, there's 6 tracks on this, and they're all really good, so I enjoy all of them. And if you like 90s Dark Throne, you will also enjoy it. My favorite track is probably track 4, Cry to the Moon. That takes inspiration from the aforementioned influences, but also from Burzum. So there are parts of that song which remind me of the Burzum song, My Journey to the Stars, which is a great song. Also the vocals in this, they sound closer to Burzum, you know, so the tortured high-pitched shriek, but musically it's more like Dark Throne. Very murky and muddy, but you can still hear everything clearly. It just sounds dark and raw, and the drumming is really heavy as well. So yeah, brilliant stuff. I would recommend it to all fans of Dark Throne for sure. So just show you the booklet here. So they've got all of the lyrics, and you can even see the calligraphy and script. It's similar to Darkthrone's Ravishing Grimness album. So yeah, here are the personnel. They don't use their real names, so I can't confirm the names of the real members. But yeah, I know Danny Lilker's definitely in this band. Yeah. So yeah, just a fantastic raw black metal release. And yeah, so I'd recommend it to fans of Darkthrone, also early Burzum. And there was another song that even featured a riff which sounded similar to one of the ones in Marduk's, those of the Unlight, so no complaints there, obviously. Yeah, so for fans of 90s raw black metal, this is a brilliant, underrated release. This is Hemlock with Crush the Race of God. All right. And now ending the video on an unusual note, I'm going through my whole collection, so I'm just going to include it. A lot of you might be surprised that I own this, but yes, this is Him with And Love Said No, which is the greatest hits album from 1997 to 2004. Now, I don't want to be harsh about this album, but you may recall again that I included this in my 10 terrible albums in my collection video. Again, I was probably a bit harsh when I said that. The point is, for me, this is just not my style. So how would you describe Him's music? They describe themselves as love metal because it's sort of metal oriented love songs. I'm not a big fan of love songs, so straight away, you know, this band's not going to appeal to me too much. But the reason why I got it, I think I've mentioned before, is in the past, like two of my ex-girlfriends were actually really into Him. So, you know, sometimes it's sort of that nostalgia that you get or experienced by association. But I bought this album at the time, you know, I was dating the second one, and yeah, it was because it, you know, of that connection between us. So I thought, yeah, it sort of brings good memories, but listening to it these days, this album does nothing for me. I feel that this music is very overly sentimental and soppy and sappy, whatever you want to call it, but it's really just not for me. And some of the songs I actually find quite painful to listen to. So it's not, I'm saying this just like with Helloween, I acknowledge the musical talent, and like the lead singer Villa Vallo, obviously he has a good voice, they can write songs, it's just not my style, it's not for me at all. On this album, the cover songs are okay, like Solitary Man, originally by Neil Diamond, is a good song, good cover, and they also include a good cover of Wicked Game, originally by Chris Isaac, even though that song's a bit depressing. But most of the songs on this I don't like. Like there's a couple of ones like The Funeral of Hearts, In Joy and Sorrow, they're okay. But there are other songs which I find outright fucking painful on this album, like Join Me and what's that one? Oh, Gone with the Sin. Oh God, that's excruciating. When I actually made myself listen to this album the other day, I had to turn it off with that song, especially when he says shivers down my spine. The way he enunciates that word, just highly annoying. But that's just me. So my opinion is not the law. I'm not saying it's a terrible band. Musically, they're talented. It's just not the style for me. Yeah. But here's the disc anyway. And they've got some kind of... here's a picture of the band. And Villa Vallo, he was obviously a pin-up boy for goth girls. But yeah, so it's that kind of music. If you like goth rock, maybe, you might enjoy this. So like bands such as Typo Negative, stuff like that, even though I'm not really into that kind of music either. So yeah, like I said, I bought this album by sort of association and for nostalgic reasons. And at that time, you know, which was early 2000s, it was very relevant to me, but not these days. So yeah, I just never listen to this anymore and I don't really get into it. Do you want it? But yes, as I said, not slagging this band off, it's just not my style. But if you're a fan of goth rock, you might like it. So that's Him with And Love Said No. All right, that's it guys. So thank you for your patience with this video. I appreciate you watching if you got all the way through. Let me know your opinion about these albums. And remember, we're allowed to have different opinions. So let's get some discussion going. Remember, you don't have to hate me or unsubscribe if I said something about a band that you like. It would be so boring if we were all the same. So in the next video, what am I going to do? There's some interesting threads coming up. So we'll see what happens there. And the next one will probably be a collection update. So once again, thanks a lot for all of your support of the channel, and I hope that you continue to watch. And in the meantime, take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.